This editorial may be distressing for some viewers, even those of you who might think of yourself as desensitized in these troubling times, though distressing is kind of the point. New details about the horrific sexual violence perpetrated by Hamas on Jewish girls and women have been uncovered in a 2-month investigation by the New York Times published today. Now, this work represents a particularly significant piece of journalism because it comes from a publication with a long history of anti-Israel bias. Its own former opinion editor, Barry Weiss, a Jewish centrist who quit in disgust in 2020, has repeatedly called out her former masthead over this bias, including tweeting last month, "If you thought that the Hitler-loving reporter in Gaza that the paper had appointed was the only scandal at the New York Times, think again." It's just one reason that the left-leaning newspaper is such a favourite among the woke crowd. Only 5 days ago, it attracted criticism for publishing an opinion piece written by the Hamas-appointed mayor of Gaza, which entirely blamed Israel for the mass devastation of the war. There was an alarming but predictable lack of self-awareness and accountability for his own government's actions, both in starting this war with the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust and in maximising its civilian toll. And it went completely unchallenged on the pages of the Times. Keep all that in mind when considering its latest investigation. The report on the sexual violence on October 7 relied on verified video footage, photographs, GPS data from mobile phones, and interviews with more than 150 people, including witnesses, medical personnel, soldiers, and rape counsellors. It established that the attacks against women were not isolated events, but part of a broader pattern of gender-based violence on October 7. It identified at least 7 locations where Israeli women and girls appeared to have been sexually assaulted or mutilated. The victims included Gal Abdush, mother of 2 from central Israel, whose half-naked body was found sprawled on a highway. Her face was burned beyond recognition, her right hand covering her eye, her legs spread, private parts exposed. Another woman's corpse was found in the rubble of a besieged kibbutz, with dozens of nails driven into her thighs and groin. 2 dead female soldiers at a base near Gaza appeared to have been shot directly in their vaginas. An eyewitness who had been at the dance party that Hamas militants attacked spoke at length to the newspaper and to Israeli police and recounted seeing groups of heavily armed gunmen rape and kill at least 5 women. The same witness said one victim, a young woman, was knifed by her rapist, another victim mutilated. The details of those attacks are too harrowing to repeat on television. She says she saw terrorists carrying the severed heads of 3 other women. Another eyewitness, Raz Cohen, recalled seeing a young woman at the dance party being dragged naked and screaming across the ground by 5 armed men. He said they start raping her. I still remember her voice, screams without words. Then one of them raises a knife and they just slaughter her. I told you it was horrific. And these are the stories that we can tell you about. Others are simply far too graphic for broadcast. The question is, will this investigation by a newspaper accused of being anti-Israel, doesn't have any sort of pro-Zionist agenda, will it be enough to silence the many deniers and contextualizers of October 7? These deniers, among them shamefully so many women who profess to be feminists, have for so long denied or attempted to justify the evidence we've already seen of women hostages, like 19-year-old Naama Levy, who is still in captivity, being paraded through Gaza with blood covering her pants. My suspicion is we'll see these deniers follow their usual pattern of asking for evidence, then denying that evidence is real, and when it's proven beyond doubt, calling it a hoax, or finding some other way to suggest it was somehow deserved. Deniers like former league player turned Hamas apologist Sonny Bill Williams, who continues to mislead his many followers online about several proven atrocities from October 7 in this tinfoil hat video that he shared overnight.
Babies intentionally burnt in their cribs alive, proven to be untrue. Hostages treated worse than animals and raped, proven to be untrue. Children bound together and burned alive, proven to be untrue.
So the hostages were treated well then, Sonny Bill? Mia Shem may beg to differ. She spent 54 days in captivity and has given an interview to Israeli TV channel, due to air tomorrow. In a preview clip, she alludes to the sexual abuse that she was subjected to by Hamas before being brutally kidnapped.
בחלק העליון של הגוף. ואז משום מקום מישהו משם משך אותי בשיער, הכניס אותי לרכב ונסע לעזה. כמו חיה שם בספארי.
The United Nations Secretary General and the agency UN Women couldn't bring themselves to condemn Hamas for the sexual violence of Israeli women and girls for almost 2 whole months. Instead, the agency equivocated with generalized, non-specific comments like this, careful to avoid any criticism of the Palestinian terror group.
We have called from the beginning for the need to protect civilians, including and especially women and girls in the context of this conflict. And we've called for the need for any allegations of gender-based atrocities to be fully investigated with the utmost priority.
When UN Women did finally put out a statement condemning the atrocities on the 1st of December, they said they unequivocally condemn the brutal attacks by Hamas on Israel on 7 October and are alarmed by numerous accounts of sexual violence. But they couldn't help both beginning and ending the statement by lumping in the Israeli women's suffering with that of Palestinian and other women. They said, "We reiterate that all women, Israeli women, Palestinian women, as all others, are entitled to a life lived in safety and free of violence. Jewish women simply did not deserve to have their pain and suffering validated without some false moral equivalence attempted to be drawn with the deaths of Palestinian women, however deeply tragic and regrettable those civilian deaths are, in the resulting existential war that Israel was dragged into unwillingly by Hamas." And the ceasefire now crowd can just go take a seat. Hamas is a genocidal terror organization that has broken or refused multiple ceasefire offers and have no interest in peace, not until every Jew is dead. And not even then. You're next at home. The UN statement was too late anyway. Their woefully prolonged silence and that of other women's groups like the Women's March and the Me Too movement has already given license to so-called feminists and anti-Semites around the world and here in Australia to deny, minimise and contextualise the rape of Jewish women. There's a reason the hashtag #MeTooUnlessYou'reA-Jew has gone viral. But back to that first victim, Gal Abdush. Her husband was also killed by Hamas, his body found badly burned a few days after hers. The male victims in this must never be forgotten either. They are no less important. The Times article ends with Ms. Abdush's mother recounting how she lies with her daughter's orphaned children until they fall asleep every night. One of those nights, the 7-year-old asked her, "Grandma, how did Mum die?" He may be too young to know the truth, but the rest of us have an obligation to ensure that truth is never forgotten.